Mm.
When was that done?
Mhm. These
Maybe
are,
this time seeing.
you hear from Billy at all? Okay.
Okay.
Well, I don't feel bad about getting dirt on the seat now.
You'll never know.
He won't notice. We'll get it vacuumed up for then.
He probably wouldn't want to.
Yeah. Go back. No, it's not on the chair. It's by the chair. If it's not cleaned up by next week, we have a problem.
Randy and Jack.
No, I didn't think Jack was going to be here today. He was out sick yesterday. He's had the flu for a week. Bill's here.
Is he really?
You hear the crinkle crinkles. Brandy's on a Facebook or YouTube? Not red?
Real faint. And then call it to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for January 10th, 2023.
I need to make a motion to adjust the agenda to move item number 6 up to item number 4. Site plan review.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
Thank you.
Do I have a motion and a second to approve the December 13th, 2022 Planning Commission minutes?
So moved.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Item number 3, staff report.
Sorry. Finished the year with 58 single-family home permits, 15 commercial rehabilitations with 2 new commercial projects that went on throughout the entire year. It was a fairly moderate year as it relates to the housing permits, primarily because we're almost out of lots. Although we've got new developments coming on, and some of them are under construction, so, or just finishing construction and no houses yet. So there are likely to be roughly the same amount of housing starts that we've had, given the economy scenario. I don't anticipate we're going to spike up. This is the most we've had in 3 years. We've had 50, 51, and this was 58. Predominantly for us related to the lack of developable lots. Other than that, I wanted to highlight to you as well, in your packet, you always get a staff report from staff. And somehow or other, I didn't get it properly to Brandy Thursday before I left. I have one. Instead of giving it to you late and the public not having it either, I'll just read my staff report associated with that when it comes time for that item to come in on the Second Creek Meadows. We finished up the developers agreement Thursday before I left, and that was the only item outstanding. Got everything else in, and somehow or other, I just didn't double check that it got put on, and I apologize to all of you that it didn't get put on my packet. That's all I have, unless there's questions.
Anyone have any questions? Not, we'll move on to the new item number 4, the site plan review for 14991 North Industrial Drive, Lot 15, First Park. Do I have a first and a second for that review?
So moved on the first for the site plan review.
I'll second.
No, do we want Mr. Mann to do any presentation on it? Do we want to hear anything from him or from staff?
I apologize. If I could, I'd like to give an explanation. In your packet, you have a copy of a plat document, a site plan layout that has some red and blue ink notes on it. That was in part because we hadn't received back from Mr. Mann's architect/engineering folks a revised copy, but he had agreed to the terms that were placed on that. On your desk now is the big 11x17 sheet that shows those changes that we requested and discussed with Mr. Mann previously. And it shows it, and it is accurate as to our agreement on the matter. So I wanted to clarify this additional document, and it came in this afternoon. So I wanted you guys to at least see the corrected version of the original document versus the one with our notes on it. So as long as those notes are taken into account, we're in good shape. First item I'd like to discuss with you is, keep in mind, this is an industrial property adjacent to other industrial properties. So the site plan rules are it's the most relaxed site plan rules we have because it's industrial next to industrial. Those sections require that they have a facade treatment on the street side that is different than the other sides. In this case, they will be putting 50% of the facade will be hardy board, hardy siding. It will make it, and it'll be on the gable top edge. The documents you see don't show that, but I do have other documents noting that that's what they are going to do after we provided them with comments. It meets all of those standards. There was a request. We have a standard provision in our code for metal buildings that they have 24 gauge steel. That's based on the premise that you're going to have either 4 or sometimes even bigger 4-foot spacing between the purlins and the beams going up. The lower the number in steel gauge is stronger. So if you got a 6 or 8 foot span between them, 24 gauge will withstand the pressures and it doesn't allow it to get torn up. This particular construction methodology that they're using, and we've already received the building plans as well. Everything's on a 24-inch center, and they've requested a 26 or 28 gauge. Calculations are the same for the quality of the material. When you put the structure closer together, the ability for that metal to warp or to wobble or whatever goes away. Our standards are based upon the real wide stuff that happens in bigger facilities. And keep in mind, this building itself is 3,600 square feet. So relatively small, 60 by 60 building. I have a staff report, I think, that lays out all of the other items as it relates to color, et cetera. So if you have any of those questions, applicants here, if you have any questions, I will highlight to you, and Mr. Mann specifically noted this to me earlier on the phone. If there are any questions, please note that he does have a hearing impairment, so he may not hear at all. Is that a fair statement, Bill? Yeah, okay. Okay. So that's all I have from the staff side. If you have questions of Bill or his building designer, they're both over there.
Any discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none. I would like to have a first and a second to go ahead and I guess approve this site plan review.
So moved.
I'll second.
Brandy.
Rob?
Aye.
Deb?
Sorry. Aye.
Dennis?
Aye.
Mayor Boley?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Alderman Chevalier?
Aye.
6-0.
To clarify, this item will be on the Board of Aldermen's agenda next week for final approval.
Bill, you're good to go.
See you in a week. Same time, same place, next week.
He didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Moving on, I'll open the public hearing. So I'm opening a public hearing on primary plat for Second Creek Meadows, continue from December 13th, 2022 Planning and Zoning meeting. If any members of the public wish to speak for or against the item, please identify yourself, give your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. I'll first call on staff to present an overview of the proposal.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. I again apologize for not getting you this document as it relates to the staff report on this matter. I will go through the items that you usually get to read the week before, just real briefly so you get an understanding of staff's recommendation on it. One of the questions that you have to look at is whether the plat conforms to the subdivision and zoning regulations of the city. And in this case, this plat, staff's report indicates this plat represents the overall development pattern that's consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinances. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan's intended expansion of the downtown district with access to nearby residential areas. The development should be laid out to good natural surface drainage to a storm sewer or natural water course. This is all uphill from the Smiths Fork of the Little Platte River and its drainage basin. And the layout is such that drainage is maintained in its existing patterns as much as possible through storm sewers that bypass the adjacent developed properties. It runs across the ground sheeting naturally now. Some of it will have to go underground as it gets developed to avoid getting onto those other properties. It will drain into a pond that is on the property, existing pond. Our engineers generally do not recommend that we put a detention basin inside the floodplain because it will fill up with floods, even if it's not a huge rain. If the Corps opens it up, that drainage basin fills with floodwaters. But there will be one because it's an existing one. So there will be a detention basin inside that floodplain area that meets all of the sufficient standards they are talking about. Excuse me. Limited amount of cut and fill. There will be a little bit of fill necessary to create the northern edge of Creekside Court. I apologize, Creekside Court, to get those lots outside of the floodplain for purposes of development. I think it's about 24 inches. It may be 36. There are not any significant amount of natural vegetation that's worth saving. There are no significant trees or anything. It's a farm field that's had horses on it, so there's not a lot of trees. And it's in a floodplain, so the trees along the river will stay in place. To the extent possible, all the lots are above the adjacent streets grading, which is appropriate as well. All the lot widths are appropriate for the zoning districts they're laid in. And that includes all the setbacks. All of the lots meet the minimum size requirements, and none of them at all exceed the 2.5 to 1 length to width limit that our code has. They are generally square lots, as they're required to be, other than when they get into a sharp turn cul-de-sac scenario. And then they all meet the standard there as it relates to road frontage. That road frontage is measured at the build line instead of the property line on a straight street. No excessive grading. It's laid out with proper design principles. It contains 87 potential dwelling units with 2 separate access roads and generally good spacing from the existing streets as it relates to the road design. This applicant submitted a full traffic study as it relates to the only unregulated intersection out there currently, which is Loman and Second Creek Bridge Road. No off-site improvements were recommended as a result of that study. So no turn lanes or any of those things are required. As I mentioned earlier, there is a development agreement that lists the scheduling of when construction will occur. For example, the improvements on Second Creek Bridge Road in front of the first phase, which will be where the Creekside Court, I can't read it. My glasses are blurry. I apologize. That first phase 1 street, all the improvements that the Public Works Department has requested must be done at that time. That includes the 8-foot wide walking trail that the city has received a grant to construct along this area. The developer will construct that phase because it'll occur before the city's construction, which is 3 years down the road. So that's an example of what they will have to do. The other road improvements are subject to the development agreement as to the timing. They occur when and if and when this development reaches phase 3, that's when they have to do those adjacent road improvements on the adjacent roads. There are the only thing the traffic study indicated is better signage needs to occur on Loman, because the speed limit on Loman is actually 25 according to our codes, but there's no separate sign designate the difference. So if you're coming across 164th to the east and it comes around the corner, that's a 35-mile-an-hour zone. There's no sign designating that it's reduced, so that needs to be in place ahead of time, just to bring the speeds, to let people know the speed is no longer 35. And that was just something that it hadn't been caught before, but their study pulled it out. All of the lots meet the zoning code widths as well. Let's see, and I apologize. This is usually easier to handle when you're reading it versus me reading it out loud. All the lots have adequate and safe access to a public street from one of the local streets inside it. All the site distances are met, all those things. The location is such that it actually reduces sprawl and limits any extensions or expansions of existing facilities. The comprehensive plan talks about infill scenarios where you're putting stuff in the middle. There are developments further west, two of them, one on the north, one on the south, the one on the south very large. This will be an area that'll help bridge that gap on the infill. It also is adjacent to the existing city downtown overlay district that extends all the way to the river there. No annexation is required. It's bound by a development agreement, so we've got all those issues covered. And they have submitted everything in a timely manner. What we didn't get back in time that delayed this 1 month was our review of the traffic study. So they've done everything they could. We just couldn't get caught up simply because everybody's busy on this design and engineering side of things. And staff's recommendation is that in compliance with the subdivision code and the development agreement, this meets the standards of the subdivision code. And I apologize for, again, not getting that to you last week. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jack. Brandy, public comments?
Shane Crease, 13530 Mount Olivet Road, Smithville, Missouri. I'm one of the applicants, and I just wanted to kind of reiterate some of the points that I mentioned in the last meeting. As discussed in the last meeting, this project's been designed to meet the overall goals of the city's long-term comprehensive plan. Again, it meets and helps to fill a void of much needed housing in the city of Smithville. This project will also provide additional tax dollars for the benefit of the school district. And one of the main goals of the project is to provide housing that fits the budget and needs of many first-time home buyers. Again, I think this brings a lot of value to add homes that are really needed at this time. So again, I appreciate your consideration of the project.
Okay, my name's Jim Gager. I'm from 111 Asher Bay. We're in Cedar Lake Estates. I go by the property every day. Apologize for those who've seen the bald spot on that. I hope it don't shine too much. Basically, I rise today not as a supporter nor as an opponent. Rather, I want to pose questions that when I read what was available to the public, and I understand there's a lot of it, one of them deals with the traffic study. I'd like to hear answers for the publics and for us that are going to be directly affected by this project, for this project. First of all, the traffic study. 53 single homes, 17 duplexes. That equates to approximately an additional 174 cars conservatively during peak times hitting an unimproved Second Creek Road during peak times. The traffic study, as I understand it, haven't seen it, it's not public in domain yet, looks as though it only addressed Loman Road. I think we also need to look at Second Creek Road and particularly the intersection with the state of Missouri of the intersection of Second Creek Road and 169. Perhaps there needs to be an additional turn lane involved at that intersection or a directional arrow light at that intersection, just as there is when you're heading south or heading north on 169, there's already an existing directional arrow there. So I don't believe from what I heard, since it wasn't publicly available, that the traffic study is complete. It doesn't address all the considerations that are observed daily. Second of all, when I looked at the minutes from the prior meeting, it is well defined the flood concerns. I'd like to add 2 additional thoughts for answers. First of all, there's a lot of infill that's occurred on the north side of Little Platte River. Approved by the city, those run from behind the old grocery store all the way up to Y behind Smithville Arena. That is all on the north side of Little Platte Road. The staff report says that we relied on a 2015 FEMA flood map. When was that approved, that infill approved, and what is the impact on the floodplain because of that infill on the north side? Are we basically pushing the water into this development site because of the infill that's been done on the north side of the river? It's a question I don't have the answer to, but the topology does matter when it comes to water flow. Second of all, when it comes to the river, both Second Creek Road or Second Creek and Little Platte move into or flow into the Missouri River, which is a navigable river defined by the Republican back in the 70s Clear Water Act. We are allowing water and runoff from hard surfaces, roofs, streets, and whatever, to go into the floodplain.
I'll let you finish this, but your time's really up. okay?
Understood. So it's going into the floodplain. So the question is that permissible? What does the federal law say about it? That overrides anything that we do here. And then I will, if I could take one of leisure. So
No,
the housing issue, I think is totally different.
done. Next.
I'm Roberta Lohman, 16251 Lohman Road in Smithville here, and I am opposed to the project only because, believe me, I am not opposed at all to development in Smithville. I sold my property with the understanding with Mr. Hartman that it would be single-family homes, or I would have never sold my home. I had 3 contracts, the third one with a plat that I'm prepared to give you all that was provided to me on the agreement with that contract. So again, if you hear that I do not want Smithville to progress or develop, that is absolutely not true, or I would not have sold it. I have spoken to all my neighbors before I sold. And during the course of the selling, the Hadleys that are here tonight, Connie Murphy, George Lohman, and again, here's what I want to mention. I spoke to George today. In the minutes that was approved earlier, it made reference in, I believe, 6 or 7A, wherever it said the community area, R3 to the west is already there, and south is agricultural. The R3, I would like to know where that is because that's George's land and it's not R3. As far as he knows, that was approved in the minutes. And also, if it is approved, I would like to know when it was approved. And the traffic study that is not completed, I don't know how this board could approve something that you don't know what the traffic and the impact is going to be on the neighborhood with multifamily homes, which was never agreed to. 53 homes, and again, I can provide you the plat that I was given by Mr. Hartman, compared to 87 now on less than it was 43 less than 11 that was sold. So now we're down to 32 acres and we're talking 87. It's just not, I mean, the traffic, everything, it's just not what it was supposed to be. So if the planning and zoning would let me know about the R3 and where that is located west of Lohman Road and Mr. Hendricks on what you had said earlier. If there's something in writing that all of us as the neighbors and the community on Loman Road could have that in writing, that would be good. And maybe that would be in the minutes. I'm not sure. No, what you had talked about earlier on all the study and everything, if it's in the minutes, that would be good so we could all see that. Wonderful.
Roberta. you're
Thank
great
you.
at that.
Sorry.
Hi, Christine Bunch, 18608 Primrose Street. Thank you for talking to me today, Deb and John. I do appreciate it, but I do object to this plot approval, mainly because everybody wants to hang their hat that there is a items that did not make it into the deed, but I'm here to ask you today, who is responsible for making the items that on the additional terms of the signed contract into the deed? Is it the seller's agent, which is Dan Hartman? Is it the buyer's agent, which is Dan Hartman? Is it LMW Investments registered agent, Dan Hartman? I know investor applicants obviously need a bigger ROI, like Shane Crees has even said he's an invested applicant. So I understand that. And I'm also not opposed to development and growth in Smithville. But when it's at the hands of somebody who I feel has been taken advantage of, I think the public deserves the right to know. I know that there's a lot of hands in this. I get the ROI. And I understand that an investor even has $400,000 on the hook. So I get it that people need to get repaid, but I don't think this should be rushed. I think this should be paused. And I think everyone should take a deep breath and wait for the litigation to happen in court before making any decisions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pat Luce. I haven't been up here since the TIF approval. A little nervous. Okay, I live at 300 Maple Lane. Can you hear me? Apartment 1 in Smithville, Missouri. Let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm a native of this town. I graduated from high school in Smithville in 1969. I'm an oldie. I moved back here in 2009, and I was shocked and amazed at all the wonderful growth here. In fact, I'm still amazed and am proud of the growth in this community. So tonight I'm here in 100% support of the zoning changes and the proposed development at Second Creek Meadow Project. It is very consistent with your comprehensive plan, which was just approved in November of 2020 and addresses the needs of our community. We know that we need more housing at all price points in order to continue to prosper and grow. And this development will ensure that the people who serve this community, the young professionals, teachers, police officers, firemen, and so forth, can work as well as live in this community and raise their families here. This is vital to our ability to attract and, more importantly, to retain professionals here. We currently don't have adequate housing to address also the aging population of our seniors and our retirees in the community. And this project addresses both. And any concerns we have regarding the sewer and plans and so forth have been addressed by the city officials. So in summary, I urge you to stick to the facts, to stick to the finding of the facts, and to adhere to our comprehensive plan and move forward with the project as presented. Thank you.
Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak during the public hearing? Is Will Reuter available?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I was looking for the hand raise signal. My name is Will Reuter. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City, headquartered in Kansas City, Missouri. And I've been making the rounds with communities throughout the summer and the fall to just advocate that communities consider all applications that come before you for what they are. a diversity of price point is going to require a diversity of product as we move forward. The truth of the matter is we've seen a historic deterioration in affordability. And what was previously an acceptable or a universally understood form of entry-level housing is evolving as the economy evolves and people's ability to pay evolves. And so we are certainly encouraging communities to perhaps think outside the box, well within the confines of their comprehensive plans and their statutes that are on the books, to ensure that everything is done above board and is suitable to the needs of the community. When we look at what is able to be brought to market, considering the incredible cost of construction, while you may see in the headlines that dimensional lumber is coming down or has reached a pre-pandemic low, that is encouraging, but we don't only build homes out of 2x4 2x4s anymore. Those require also OSB and some of those other construction materials that have not seen a reduction in price, and in fact have only seen an increase in price. And so we are encouraging communities to consider applications that come before them based on their merits, certainly whether or not to move forward, but certainly not to dismiss out of hand an application that may be different than perhaps what you've seen in the past. And so we support communities certainly that want to innovate. There's certainly a tremendous amount of pent-up innovation within the industry itself. And we want to partner with communities that are looking for new and exciting ways to add housing inventory so that people up and down the socioeconomic ladder will find a place to call home in these communities. Thank you very much for your time this evening, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on Zoom?
Seeing no more from the public left to speak, I'll call the hearing closed. At this time, there'll be no further comments made by the public unless specifically asked a question by a member of the committee. If you are asked a question, please limit your response to the specific question. We'll move on to the next item. Do I have a first and a second to discuss the preliminary plat for Second Creek Meadows?
Second.
Any discussion? Questions?
Jack, I know you're losing your voice, but just for clarification, the traffic study is complete, correct?
Yes, it was a traffic study. That was a full traffic study. As a matter of fact, their traffic engineer reported that ordinarily a development of this size wouldn't require a full traffic study. But it's the first one coming out of the gate for us as a city, following our new transportation master plan requirements. This one, in accordance with our public works director, Chuck Souls, met those standards. It did evaluate turn lanes associated with primarily the new intersection or the Loman and Second Creek intersection, but we did require them to provide us a evaluation of turn lanes that may be necessary at 169. It wasn't close to any of the proctors related to that, based upon the additional traffic that this development, when fully built out in 5 to 10 years, would generate there. It did note that in about 20 years, something would likely need to have to occur at that intersection. Based upon the, and if the growth continues at its current rate, using these 89 units or 87 units as an example. So it did address it. And it didn't require turn lanes left or right on Second Creek Bridge or on Loman. It just, the numbers were not high enough to generate that.
Jack, could you address Mr. Gager, right? Gager's comments regarding the flooding concerns on the north side infill, and then also, I guess, the federal.
Yeah, sure. All of those things on the north were granted permission to do that. The primary area was from KK and 169 south on the west side of the road. That property was issued a permit to begin filling operations some 30 years ago, and they've been working on it forever. In order to even get the permit, they have to perform a hydrological evaluation that shows the current floodplain levels, the fill, and what that will do. And then there has to be a no-rise certificate issued by a Missouri engineer. They have to get the hydrological data from the Corps of Engineers, FEMA, as well. So they can do that hydrological evaluation. And then once they get that and it's certified, then and only then can the city issue a permit. All of the folks that have requested it have gotten it, and it only applies in what's called the floodway. So if you look at the plat that you have before you, I'll show you, it's going to be hard to see because it's small, but you'll see a bunch of blue areas. And then you'll see some areas that have cross-hatching lines in it. If you zoom in on that, those cross-hatched lines are what's called the floodway. Development in the floodway has to go through that process. And to get that no rise certificate. If it's in the floodplain, which is blue other than the cross-hatched area, they have to simply get a floodplain development permit that we issue based upon an erosion control plan to keep additional mud from getting in the river or the drainage area. We know it's there because it's right adjacent to the river, so they have to put erosion control methods in. There is no other hydrological evaluation. It's the floodplain they can fill, anyone can fill at any time associated with that. They do have to get the development permit as a legal requirement so that we have record of it. And that's what has occurred here. The evaluations will occur in this scenario. There's no flood way area being encroached upon. It's only floodplain. So they have a development permit that's required. The second aspect of this, Mr. Gager brought up, was the quality of water, the Clean Water Act from 1972. The city of Smithville in 2013 was declared by the state of Missouri as to be a town of 10,000, even though our population was 8,500, because of various other factors. And when we got declared to be at that level, we entered what's called the MS4 permit program. MS4 is called the Multiple Separate Storm Sewer System. Sorry, there was 4 S's. I couldn't remember what the 4th one was. And it's a permit program that evaluates our operations, including in what we anticipate will be the next permit cycle, another 3 years out. And we're on our second permit cycle already. When we get to that end of this one, we anticipate that we will have to begin doing what's called outfall testing to test the quality of water as it comes out. We have hundreds of outfalls all over the city, and they are the areas where it comes out of a concrete pipe and dumps into a river or dumps into a drainage area that drains into a river. All those outfalls have to be evaluated for the quality of water. From our perspective, our engineers have pushed us towards keeping as much water on the ground as possible because the soil or the vegetation filters that water. And it allows it to get out into the actual stream with less of the impactful stuff, including farm fields. Just so we understand, the number one polluter of our waters are farm fields. They by far put more pollutants in than any road outfall or anything else because of all the chemicals they can use. Luckily, a lot of the no-till stuff has slowed that down. But we are an MS4 city, so we have to go through that process. And we are required by the state to get monitored by the state and to do all these things. So we have safeguards in place with authority above us telling us what to do. I think that's all of them. MS4. Yeah, the only other question that I have notes on was from Ms. Lohman, and it's the R3 designation. It was approved by the time I got here, prior to a contract with the assessor's office where they put the GIS website available for all of our zoning per parcel. So you can go look up our zoning on their parcel. It was an annual, the planning commission would see a map and say, yep, that's us. And they would approve the zoning map. I can find nothing associated with any of the zoning on any of the parcels around there, other than every year those planning or those zoning maps were approved by the planning commission up till 2013. This has a small parcel. Mr. Lohman's property has a small area of it, about 45% of it, it looks, that was designated as R3 on the corner. When, where, why, and how, I couldn't tell you. I never found the ordinance, but I do see all the maps that were approved. So somebody back then may have known, but it occurred somewhere prior to 2007 is all I can say, because that's when I got here.
Yeah, I started going back in relation to that same question. I started going back through all the minutes from every planning and zoning meeting, working my way backwards.
Yep.
And couldn't find anything.
Yep.
So it had to be done a long time ago. So that's
Yeah.
not, I know that's not the answer you want to hear tonight, but it's been a long time ago that it appears that it was zoned as R3.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I would agree. I've never found the ordinance. All I can say is the methodology of those changes, once the planning commission adopts that map as the official map annually, it became the zoning of all the properties on it. As a matter of fact, that's how we got all of the existing zoning onto the county system, is we gave them a copy of the most recently approved map. And then they went parcel by parcel.
So, we've had a few of these, pop up recently where the zoning has been really crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
Mr. Lohman has an opportunity if he wants to get that all rezoned, right?
Sure.
And however he wants to see it.
Yeah.
So that option is out there.
Yes, he can downzone it, he can upzone it, seek to upzone it in accordance with the comp plan. Either way it would work. As long as it's in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Downzoning is always easier. Downzoning meaning to less restricted. Going to ag or going from R3 to R2 to R1, that's easier. The standards are easier for those types of zones. It's when you move up that they become more concerning. And that's why we have all these steps and processes for
That is up
those.
to the property owner to come and request that.
Yes, yes. It's the southeast corner of the property. So it joins both Second Creek and Loman Road. It does not include the house that sits up there, which is a 1 acre or 3 acre parcel. And that, according to our old maps, was never zoned anything. Just doesn't show up. So it's white on the maps because it didn't have a zoning designation. As you all know, when we annexed, those properties were all annexed. This property in particular was annexed in 84. The property across the street was in 86 and 87. And then just west of George Lohman's property is the property that was by Kenny, the Ford guy, Kenny Brownlee. His was an 87 annexation as well. As you know, when we do annexations, one of the first things we do is follow it up with a zoning, set the initial zoning. There's a lot of that didn't occur. So a lot of it that's zoned A1 that you see in town was because it was farmland in the county and no one bothered setting the initial zoning. And the plat maps or the zoning maps later then came in and said, this is what that zoning is. Most of the land north of the river on the west side of 169, and then when you get even farther north, most of the farmland stuff that's in the city limits was never zoned by the city, other than by the zoning map. yeah, there's all kinds of the goofiness, as you said. It's, don't know how, where, why, but once the zoning map was approved by the planning commission, that's why we changed it to digital format and it gets updated monthly. Every time there's a change, it's automatic and you guys have seen it already in advance.
All right, and one other thing, someone asked this of me earlier today, but the units, are they gonna be fourplexes or are they gonna be like duplexes?
They are duplexes. They're based upon, and our recommendation of approval in the development agreement is based upon 87 total units, which is 53 single family and 17 multifamily that will be duplexes. And the only way they could get what they were wanting to put on there to fit was to do R3 versus R2. The lot differentials are significant. In the R3, you all went through last couple of years and made significant adjustments, which includes adding those units to the site plan review, which triggered the subdivision requirements if it was a vacant parcel. This, we're already meeting it through this process. That's where we get the offsite improvements, similar to what happened up north with the Herzog properties. We did it through the site plan process.
Do we have a price point or price range yet?
Wouldn't, since the houses are probably a year out, it'd be a wagon at best right now.
Yeah, I know with the development by the school, he was, I mean, that came to us 4 years ago and they're trying to get under 200K and they're selling significantly higher, so.
Yeah.
It
Their
takes 2 to
original,
3 years to get
yeah,
roads
their
and everything,
original
so.
hope in there was try to get it under 200. By the time it was approved, the first batch of it, they were already at 225 to 250. And now they're selling from 379 to 429 for duplex halves.
I do want to go back kind of along the traffic study
Mhm.
where it came out about the speed limit signs.
Yes,
So is that the city's responsibility to get
Yes.
those up? How
Yes.
soon do you know that those will go up? I think it should be rather.
We start filling the last street position. so.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. And we're more, I think the Public Works Department's more focused on keeping the roads in shape for purposes of winter. Winter's not done yet. And it'll require them to go out and get a locate so they can set the pipe and all that stuff.
I would like to see them do that as soon as possible. I understand the other work that we don't have any snow right now.
Right.
Hopefully none this next week, so hopefully that can be done sooner than
Thursday.
later. I know, I'm hoping we don't get it. So,
Yes. And to be quite frank, that, but for that traffic study, it just never
Right.
dawned on us to even look at it, but they did.
I will share a comment. I haven't been asked, but I'm going to share this comment as far as the amount of traffic. I live north of town, right off of W. And when the development went in next to us, Clay Creek, there were 120 units that went in there. We didn't get a turn lane or nothing new at 169 and W. So it can be, you will have more traffic. Yes, I'm not going to ignore that here. But it's probably not going to be what we've seen up north. And I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just letting you know when they do those traffic studies, it's very hard to understand their methodology when they come in and do those. And we even have the lake traffic, through the summer. So.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that was almost double, 124 units. That actually surprised staff, that the engineering study, and it had to go through MoDOT because it was a state highway.
right,
Um,
both of them were.
So what that kind of surprised it, that it didn't meet the warrants there. Because it just seemed like 124 units. And that one was 124 units that were put up and filled within 25 months.
Rather quickly.
Yeah.
In all honesty, rather
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, they were dropping 10 buildings at a time, so 40 units at a time, and they pulled permits in 18 months and finished construction in 25.
Any other comments or questions?
Jack, staying on the traffic study, just to clarify, does the traffic study include Second Creek Road?
Yes, it includes Second Creek, Loman, and specifically the state highway intersection. We didn't anticipate it would trigger anything. It does identify that in about 20 years, assuming fairly significant growth pattern stays constant and on Second Creek and farther west of there, that a turn lane scenario will have to occur by that time.
And you're talking future development, not related.
Yeah, not related to
particular-
this
it's-
or
you're
any
talking
of the
about
exi-
Other land that is being developed
Yes.
for houses.
Yes.
And do traffic studies get posted for public review?
To be quite frank, this is the first traffic study that we've had under the new transportation master plan for a residential development. We've never posted them. We certainly can. We can put it on the other documents scenario of the packet.
I
If
might
that's something that
suggest-
you all want us to do, we can certainly do that.
I might suggest that we do post that and make that public.
I see 4 of 7 heads shaking, 5 now. That means I'll do it.
I don't see there any reason why we can't post
Yeah,
whatever
no,
documents
we-
we have.
Yeah, no, we can certainly post it. Yep.
Just need to make sure that's we can navigate to it,
Sure.
you know where.
Well, and
Under
it,
the other document.
yeah, it'll be other documents. We can also put the stormwater study on there. Those are usually a couple hundred pages. So if you want us to post them, we can certainly post those too. I do not believe there's any regulation related to stopping those.
More information available to the public, the better.
Sure, I don't have a problem putting it up. Most of this stuff, I see them and I review them to make sure that they are signed properly. And then I send them to engineers to look at. I look at the summary, what's the additional construction that they're going to have to do so I can make sure it goes into a development agreement. This one didn't have any of that. It had some highlight points that was brought to my attention by our engineers and people reviewing it. Hey, we need to look at this. Public Works is already aware of the speed limit issue too. Speed limit sign, sorry.
Seeing no other comments or anything, Brandy,
Okay, Mayor Boley,
Aye.
Dennis,
Aye.
Deb. Rob,
Aye.
Melissa,
aye.
Alderman Chevalier.
Aye.
6-0.
If I could clarify a couple of things. Number one, sorry, this will be on the agenda for next week's meeting. It will be contingent upon approval of the zoning ordinance that has been preliminarily approved through first reading and is up for second reading. If that doesn't pass, then this can't be presented because this is based solely on the zoning stuff. Ordinarily, we would have done all this in one meeting, but our engineers hadn't got back on the traffic study evaluation. So without having that information, we weren't going to come forward to you without having that. So that's why this delay. It turns out that the January 3rd meeting being canceled was fortuitous for us because it doesn't delay the process at all. They had a meeting in December, followed by the second meeting in January for approval. And we were able to fit in this meeting. So everything worked out square there. But it will be on the agenda as a resolution contingent upon the approval of whatever that bill number is.
Okay, Brandy, do we have any open comments? Do I have first and a second for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right.
Well,